Now these days there's probably a lot of people who have quite a few great things to say about Hunter Hearst Helmsley. All of the guys and gals in NXT, I would imagine, will give you a glowing recommendation of their boss, particularly the ones who got some lovely pushes over the years. However, during his time as a full-time wrestler and basically his whole stint on the main roster, there are many people on the other side of that coin who probably don't have quite a lot of great things to say about Triple H, and a lot of them for good reason too. I'm Adam Nicholas, this is What Culture Wrestling, and these are 9 wrestlers who hated Triple H. Number 9, Justin Roberts. Justin Roberts always came across as a stand-up guy. His book, Best Seat in the House, is one of the best wrestling books in recent memory, a warts and all dive into the murky waters of WWE backstage bullying and behaviour. In the book, Roberts wasn't exactly glowing when it came to his perception of Triple H. Hunter's willingness to play favourites was central to it all, more accurately his willingness to keep things from getting over in favour of his personal picks getting more exposure. He wrote in his book, Hunter started squashing stuff that really started getting over. If you notice, it's all about the future, and the future is NXT, but focusing on the future shouldn't mean ignoring the present. Zack Ryder got over huge to the point where the crowd was cheering him at Madison Square Garden, and Dolph Ziggler got himself over. But there's a glass ceiling, and anybody that they don't want to get over is squashed despite fans strongly getting behind them. While Roberts' commentary might sound like the standard for a recently released WWE talent, the tone and balance of the book suggests there's a little bit more weight to the AEW ring announcer's words than most. Number 8, Chris Jericho. Before he blossomed into the aging rock star veteran professional that he is today, Chris Jericho was an elite talent looking to make his mark in the choppy, shark-infested seas of WWE. He entered with a reputation and wasn't afraid to ruffle a few feathers to make a point. Although performers like that would turn a penny back in the Attitude Era. If you didn't grab that brass ring, someone else was going to take that spot from you, brother. Early in 2020, the leader of the Inner Circle spoke candidly about his past issues with Triple H, citing their real-life animosity as one of the reasons the two had such great chemistry in the ring together. They legitimately wanted to beat the tar out of each other, and that tension led to electric matches and a sense of realism that professional wrestling thrives on. Jericho even said that Vince McMahon actively tried to accentuate the issues in the hope of creating even better matches. Now these days, Jericho and Triple H seem to have buried the hatchet and consider each other friends, and I guess that's how age works really, isn't it? But you wouldn't be surprised really, would you, to see Jericho start bashing Triple H in an interview anytime soon. Number 7, Stevie Richards. Good old Stevie Richards. Underrated in the ring, tremendously entertaining Attitude Era performer, leader of a stable that started off entertaining, but dragged on a little bit longer than you care to remember. Stevie was the original top lackey, a vulnerable character who got over through interaction. I mean, there was a lot to love about 90s Stevie Richards. He also, however, happened to be an ECW guy, so his chances of success in a Triple H-dominated WWE were limited at best. It wasn't his own position that Stevie took issue with, though, instead growing frustrated with what he perceived as Triple H's eagerness to jump onto mean-spirited comments in the hope of making one of the top guys laugh. Now, this isn't exactly news, is it? Triple H may have mellowed as he embraced his grand uncle of pro wrestling persona, but it wasn't long ago that he was using his position to belittle those beneath him, which, by virtue of his position, was literally everyone. Stevie singled out one particular joke, a comment made about newly trimmed Chris Masters, who had managed to win his battle against various substances, and it was a comment that centered around a hypothetical book called How to Lose 40 Pounds in 6 Weeks. Now, it does feel worth noting that Masters had been popped by WWE's wellness policy for, well, I mean, come on, he was much bigger and then he was much smaller. I'll let you decide what those substances might have been amongst others, but really, there was just no need for the comment. And needless to say, Stevie Richards wasn't happy about it. Number 6, Ken Shamrock. Putting aside the inherent ridiculousness of the WWE Hall of Fame for a moment, it seems equally silly that Ken Shamrock still hasn't been inducted into the mythical list of important superstars. The world's most dangerous man was extremely influential during his time, ushering in a sense of realism and credibility that the industry has been kind of obsessed with ever since. Shamrock may never have won the WWE Championship, but it's fair to say his fingerprints are all over modern day wrestling. If you're wondering why he isn't in the Hall of Fame and hasn't ever returned for a nostalgia run over the last 20 years, look no further than Triple H. Shamrock claims that the issues between the two stem from Hunter having to put Shamrock over in those early days. A rather childish grudge, really, in an industry built on a babyface badass beating a pompous heel. And sticking with childish, Shamrock has also told a story about Triple H and others ribbing a young Mark Henry by putting in his sandwich. Why on earth you want to put an actual poo in a sandwich is one thing, why you'd want to do that to Mark Henry is another thing entirely, but Shamrock decided that enough was enough, and he told Hunter & Co. to pack it in. Can't imagine that one went down too well with Triple H though, being shown up by Shamrock like that, and the issues between the two have been simmering ever since. Number 5, Rob Van Dam. Like a couple of other names on this list, Van Dam is cut from a very different cloth to the one that gave us Triple H. One is the clean-cut poster boy for the corporate side of the wrestling industry. The other a stoner famous for landing on his head who was arguably the most popular underground wrestler during the industry's golden period. I think it's fair to say these two are about as compatible as a fish and a cattle prod. WWE's monopoly of the professional wrestling industry meant that the two were to cross paths eventually, and RVD finally found his way to the company, full-time at least, following the closure of ECW. Van Dam was actually one of a tiny number of Alliance talents to be treated as an actual star, but there was always a very definite ceiling on how far he could go. And that particular ceiling bore a striking resemblance to Hunter Hearst Helmsley. Now, while the two did have great matches, they usually ended via one big pedigree and that overwhelming feeling of deja vu. Triple H famously went on record saying that no matter how popular RVD was, he didn't have it in him to be a top star, an argument famously used against Daniel Bryan back in 2013. RVD has hit back at Triple H by arguing that he simply used the ability of others to keep himself relevant, piggybacking wherever it was possible. And I mean, looking back at those matches, he's kinda got a point. Still, whether they like each other or not, RVD is a consummate professional, and Jesus goddamn Christ, could he sell a pedigree. Number 4, Scott Steiner. It might seem strange to younger fans, but Rick Steiner was always considered the insane Steiner brother. Yep, true story. Scott was the all-American good guy, a jock extraordinaire that was expressive with his strength, but relatively restrained in personality. Somewhere along the way that went out the window and Big Papa Pump was born, blossoming into a modern-day version of the Iron Sheik, taking incomprehensible jabs at anyone who gets in his beefy way. Now, the in-ring portion of the Steiner vs Triple H feud is best left well in the past, even if it did give the world a strangely lethargic preview of what would eventually become Suplex City. Steiner's performances didn't exactly set the world on fire, but the feud put a nail in his post-WCW career, and Big Papa Pump hasn't been short of biting words in the years after.
How was your time there when you were at WWE?
Brutal.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Like many others, Steiner has focused much of his vitriol on Hunter's remarkable renaissance after he married Stephanie McMahon, reminding people that before all of that, Triple H was losing to Alex Wright in WCW and facing the Godwins in a pig slop match. Steiner has also taken the odd potshot at how Hunter is obsessed with politicking within the company, saying that the toxic culture it creates is the reason why WWE has lost elite talent like CM Punk and Jon Moxley. Now, in fairness, that isn't exactly gossip, but it's hard to argue with the master mathematician that is Scott Steiner. I mean, the numbers don't lie after all, and they spell disaster for Triple H. And there is, of course, the other small matter of Scott Steiner once calling Stephanie McMahon a on one of our What Culture Wrestling videos. Good times.
Stephanie McMahon, what the you know about wrestling now?
Number 3, CM Punk. Now, is there a more storied personal issue in modern professional wrestling? I mean, yes, of course there is. It's professional wrestling, but this one is a pretty good one nonetheless. Triple H and CM Punk came from completely different professional wrestling worlds. CM Punk was the embodiment of blood, sweat and tears, paying your dues and perfecting your craft in dingy halls before scratching and clawing your way to the top of the industry. Triple H, however, befriended the biggest name in the biggest company before marrying the daughter of the boss. But from there, you kinda know how the story goes. Triple H doesn't like Punk. Punk doesn't care. Triple H resents how popular Punk gets. Punk still doesn't care. Triple H uses extensive politicking and influence behind the scenes to stifle CM Punk's momentum at every possible opportunity. Punk cares a little bit more. The two would eventually work together over the so-called Summer of Punk, which actually turned out to be the Summer of Diesel, if I recall correctly, and they were slated to work together at WrestleMania 32. But alas, Triple H's meddling would be one step too far and proved to be the straw that broke this particular camel's back. The camel being CM Punk, and the back, which may or may not have had a staph infection at the time. Between these two guys, has there ever been more of an obvious mismatch? The voice of the voiceless and the actual son-in-law of the only voice that anybody seems to care about. Number 2, Bret Hart. Bret the Hitman Hart has never been one to keep himself to himself on the opinion front. You genuinely know where you stand with Bret, and the excellence of execution has saved some of his most biting criticism for Triple H, going on record as calling him a mediocre wrestler on a number of occasions. Even something as harmless as a computer game rating was enough to rile Hart's ire. When WWE 2K16 came out, Bret was dismayed to see that Hunter had a higher rating than him, and he made his complaints clear on his podcast. Talking about the game, Hart said, "They were telling me how I'm an 85 or something like that, and Triple H is a 98. Why would he be a 98? They go, well, because he's the boss, and we have to suck up to the boss. I don't know. He was laughing about it. It kind of pissed me off. I thought, I don't care how many titles Triple H wins, he could never lace my boots up, period." Now look, I'm all for everybody liking what they like, and everybody has their own opinion, but genuinely, if you think that statement is incorrect, well, you are wrong, and I'm sorry about that. On top of that, many of Bret Hart's comments about Hunter riding the coattails of others throughout his career are largely justified too. The whole Montreal screw job might have had something to do with this too, mind you, but hey, that's just me speculating. And number 1, with a bullet, Chyna. Of all of the people on this list, I think it's fair to say Chyna had the biggest reason for disliking Triple H. I mean, when Triple H left Chyna to start a relationship with Stephanie McMahon, this wasn't just a case of, my boyfriend has a new girlfriend now. This was literally a career that was stopped in full flow, a political romance taking precedent over a more organic one. Throw in the duplicitous nature of it all, and the ninth wonder of the world had a pretty good reason for hating Triple H. Nobody on planet Earth deserves to find out that their boyfriend is secretly sleeping with the boss's daughter, and especially having that brought to their attention by a miserable secret letter. According to Chyna's former manager, she and Triple H stopped speaking after breaking up and didn't converse again until Rowdy Roddy Piper's funeral, some 14 years later. Now, while Chyna's own life may have been fairly complicated, to see a women's wrestler who was considered to be one of the needle-moving performers in WWE just kind of excommunicated from the company for not being Triple H's partner anymore, well, it's really not great, is it? And yeah, they might have posthumously put her in the 2019 Hall of Fame alongside other DX members, but really, who's to say she would have even wanted that?